This begins Media 3 in the deposition of Sheriff Joseph Arpaio on the record at 1:40 p.m.
Sheriff, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Did you have a good break?
Great food downstairs.
What'd you have?
Seafood salad without the shrimp.
Well, I have to tell them you enjoyed it. I really like those people.
Nice people down
They're
there.
very nice, yeah. And they work really hard. Sheriff, do you want to change or supplement any of the answers that you've given to my questions up to now?
Not that I can recall.
Now, do you remember giving any press conferences regarding the death of over a dozen dogs out there in Gilbert at a place that was doing business as Green Acre, I guess?
Yes.
How many did you give? Press conferences, that is, Sheriff.
I only remember one. I'm not sure, but I don't remember. I know one that I remember.
Why did you give that one that you remember?
I remembered it because there was some documentation that I gave a press conference.
Thank you for coming.
Why did you give it?
To the best of my recollection, there was a lot of interest in this case that was it the Gilbert 24 or it's Gilbert? I'm trying to remember the.
And it was a Gilbert something.
Yeah,
Some dogs that died?
yeah. I think.
How many?
I think 21. If that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
Okay. So there's a lot of public interest, and I believe that Gilbert, whatever it was, and I think there was even demonstrations. So I thought fit that the sheriff should respond to a lot of requests from the media, and so I got, as I say, got them all together and had a press conference.
Did something happen specifically that prompted you to have a press conference when you did?
I think at the time there was a lot of demonstrations going on by that group, and a lot of questions were asked of me what the status was and so on. So had a press conference.
Isn't it true that the reason why you had the press conference when you did is because you were announcing to the public that your office was recommending 21 felony counts of animal cruelty against Austin Flake and Logan Flake?
That could have been one of the reasons to bring this situation up to date, and that may have been a reason that we did it too.
When did you learn that your subordinates were recommending that Austin Flake and Logan Flake be prosecuted for 21 counts of felony cruelty to animals?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Did you approve of the recommendation? It was a recommendation. Did they unilaterally do it, or did they have to get your approval first?
They did not have to get my approval. As I mentioned several times, they make the decision, my detectives. Now, of course, I knew that they were recommending it, but I didn't second guess them.
Did you agree with it?
I went by what they recommended.
Okay, thank you for that. That is informative, so I'm not trivializing your answer. But my question was a little bit different. Did you approve of their decision to recommend the prosecution of the Flakes on 21 felony counts of animal cruelty?
Once again,
Check the form.
once again, they made a decision. I didn't oppose their decision.
Sheriff, once again, I understand you didn't oppose it, but that's not my question. Did you approve it?
I did not officially approve it
Okay. Why not?
because on all these investigations, I let my detectives make the recommendation. I don't know all the facets of a case to make decisions. I rely on my subordinates to do the investigation and has the knowledge of all the facts.
Do you stand by their recommendation?
Yes, I stand by it.
So, where you sit this afternoon, you stand by your subordinate's recommendation to recommend the prosecution of Austin Flake and Logan Flake for 21 felony counts of animal cruelty.
I have confidence in my detectives, and that was their recommendation, and I stand by it.
But, and did you think, were you confident that you had the proper evidence to support those charges?
Once again, I'm not involved in the nuts and bolts. It's my detectives that had that knowledge.
Okay, but once again, you're not answering my question. I understand that you're not involved in the nuts and bolts, but that's not the question. Did you have confidence that there was evidence to support their recommendation?
I have confidence in my experts on animal cruelty. If that was their decision, I abided by their decision.
Okay. Did you ever announce to the press, quote, "I'm very confident that we have the proper evidence, and once again, the county attorney's office will review our evidence. We're recommending 21 felony charges, several misdemeanor charges. I didn't include the 2 rabbits that we also filed for felony charges that happened recently about 2 weeks ago, period, unquote." Do you remember saying that to the press?
What was the, well, I don't have that in front of me. You're asking me information today of what I may have said, 2 years ago, 3, 4 years ago? I got a good memory, it's not that good.
Okay, well, let me refresh it. Do you want to watch, did you watch any videos in preparation for your testimony today?
No.
Have you ever watched a video of your press conference regarding Logan Flake and Austin Flake and Logan's parents, the Hugheses?
The whole press conference?
Yeah.
No,
Do you know how long it was?
no.
Would it surprise you to learn that it was 22 minutes and 9 seconds long?
I don't know, I don't keep track how many minutes.
Sheriff, was that you?
Yes.
Thank you for coming. This is a pretty quick, I don't know if you want to call it a press conference, but I wanted to give you a brief summary of what the progress is of the situation involving the Green Acre dog investigation, which we started the investigation around June 21st. This is an intensive investigation our detectives did over 2 months, took us out of state, and did some innovative investigative techniques, like hiring a air-conditioned specialist, airflow. So we took this very serious. But,
Is this the 22 minutes that we're watching?
We're not going to watch it all.
An important investigation.
I'm going to ask you questions, so if you
Oh,
don't
okay.
remember,
The owners
All
of
right.
the
So we're gonna watch this for 22 minutes?
You could just as easily put the
action.
transcript
I
in
know
front of
that
you.
Can I add the
somewhat
transcript?
frustrated at the time it took to complete the investigation.
I didn't even,
Once again, we have
I didn't even know you had 22 minutes. You asked if I watched it. I'm watching it now.
We completed the investigation. We turned it over to the county attorney for review. And don't forget that they have to make sure they have the proper information and evidence to prosecute. So we're recommending to the county attorney that 21 felony charges be pursued against the four suspects in this investigation, the four targets that we started out with. And I'm sure that that office will review the evidence, and we'll see what happens. I'm very confident that we have the proper evidence, and once again, County Attorney's Office will review our evidence. We're recommending 21 felony charges, several misdemeanor charges. I didn't include the two rabbits that we also filed for felony charges that happened recently, about 2 weeks ago.
Did you listen? Were you able to listen to that? And we're getting you the transcript.
I just have a question.
Please, I'll try to answer.
Because you asked me, is that a 22-minute of my complete press conference?
Yes. It's not 22 minutes, Sheriff Arpaio. It's 22 minutes and 9 seconds. It's pretty long, I think, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm going to answer your question. When you asked if I saw it, I don't recall. I don't even know where you got it, but I don't recall looking at that.
Is that you?
Yeah, I know that.
And
But
that
I'm
was,
saying I don't recall.
I understand that, but you don't deny that's you and that you said all those
That
things,
isn't
do
it.
you?
No, I'm not denying it.
Okay, I didn't think you would, and we're bringing you the transcript. But I'm a little bit confused, Sheriff Arpaio, because you said you didn't recommend that Logan Flake and Austin Flake be prosecuted for 21 felony counts. You said that your subordinates did. But in your press conference, and here's a transcript of it.
You gonna mark this?
Yeah, why don't you mark this as Exhibit 1, please?
So what page are we on?
Sheriff Arpaio, it starts on page 2, sir.
Since this is the first deposition taken in this case and the first exhibit that's been marked, can we establish a protocol going forward that we mark all the exhibits serially and not start over at each deposition?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Sheriff, let me direct your attention to page 2, line 21, which
Do you mean
reads,
page 2 at the top or internal page 2?
internal page 2. Do you understand that, Sheriff?
Okay, I got the top. Okay, page 2.
Page 2,
Right
sir.
here.
would be
Right,
there.
thank you.
And starting with line 21, it reads, quote, "So we finally completed the investigation. We turned it over to the county attorney for review, and don't forget that they had to make sure they had the proper information and evidence to prosecute. So we're recommending to the county attorney that 21 felony charges be pursued against the 4 suspects in this investigation. The 4 targets that we started out with, and I'm sure that office will review the evidence and we'll see what happens. I'm very confident that we have the proper evidence. And once again, the county attorney's office will review our evidence. We're recommending 21 felony charges, several misdemeanor charges. I didn't include the 2 rabbits that we also filed for felony charges that happened recently about 2 weeks ago, period, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yes. I mean, that's what the transcript says.
Did you say that in the press conference that I just showed you?
If this is the same as that, then I would admit that I said that.
But do you see where it says twice? So we're recommending to the county attorney that 21 felony charges be pursued against the 4 suspects in this investigation. Then again, we're recommending 21 felony charges, several misdemeanor charges. I'm very confident that we have the proper evidence. You're using pronouns of we, meaning us, and I. You're not saying that you weren't part of the decision-making process. You're identifying yourself as the one who's very confident that we have the proper evidence, that we're recommending 21 felony counts. Do you deny that you were part of the team at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office to recommend 21 felony charges against Austin Flake and Logan Flake?
Well, the semantics of we could mean that we means the sheriff's office. Number 2, when I said we, I was also including the county attorney, not the county attorney. The deputy county attorneys that have been working with my detectives doing this case. So when I was saying we, I am including the county attorney officials. So that's a semantic. When I say we, I'm saying my office. But once again, I said I don't get involved in the nuts and bolts. I let my subordinates make the recommendation. So if I said we means others than just my detectives.
Did you go out to the alleged crime scene personally?
I think I've been there, yes. I don't remember the time frame.
So you think you've been there? Or
Well,
you
I
have?
know I've been there, but I don't remember the time frame.
How many times were you there?
I didn't count them.
It was more than once, right?
I
Don't
believe
interrupt him, please.
one time when they had people praying for the animals, and of course I showed up there. And it may have been another time, I believe when the investigation was in progress, I showed up.
So you went all the way. Where is your office in downtown Phoenix?
Yes,
And you drove all the way to Gilbert to the purported crime scene?
I drive all the way to Gila Bend on crime scene, so I don't know why Gilbert is.
Why did you go out there the first time that you went out there? If you aren't involved in the nuts and bolts of law enforcement at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, why did you drive all the way over there to a crime scene that didn't even involve a human?
Did not involve
Yeah,
a human?
a human hadn't been murdered.
I go
A
to
child hadn't been murdered.
I go to human situations too, for your information.
I would imagine.
One of the reasons I went out there was so much interest, especially in that area there, demonstrations and what have you, so I thought it was appropriate for the sheriff to show up.
What'd you do when you showed up?
Didn't do hardly anything. I let my detectives do their investigation. I didn't get involved in the investigation.
So you just stood around?
Yeah, basically.
So-
I may have talked to some of the victims if they showed up. I don't recall.
You talked to some reporters too, right?
If they were there, yes.
Were there reporters there? Do you remember that?
I don't remember, but there's a possibility they were.
They were, because I found it on YouTube.
Okay.
And you were there when the search warrant was enforced at the Hughes' residence, were you not?
I don't recall.
Okay, whenever you guys have sign-in sheets to record who goes to enforce a search warrant, right?
A sign-up sheet?
Yeah, like that it lets it's a record of everyone from your office who was at a particular place, right?
I don't know if we sign up every time they go out on the street.
How long were you out there the first time?
I don't recall.
And you went there because you wanted to talk to people?
I go to many crime scenes.
Were you supervising?
No,
So you weren't participating in the enforcement of this search warrant, were you?
no,
And you weren't supervising, were you?
no.
You were just talking to reporters, right?
No, as the sheriff, sometimes I do show up and at least let the public and even my own officers know that the sheriff is the sheriff. Not that I make any decisions, but I think it might be a little comfortable for my people on any type of crime to know the sheriff is there to support them.
Okay. And did you learn anything at the crime scene?
Not that I can recall.
Did you go, did you look in the area where the dogs died?
No, I don't recall if I did that.
Did you talk to anybody?
To anybody?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there, if I recall. I don't remember if I talked to some of the victims. I may have.
The victims of
Or
what?
the owners of the dogs, I'm sorry.
What did you think when you got out there? Were you appalled?
I've been in law enforcement 55 years. I think I'm a professional. I've seen everything. I don't let my personal feelings interfere with how I do my job, or who people are, or whatever. That doesn't enter in how I do my job.
Are you a supporter of Senator Jeff Flake?
What do you mean? What do you mean supporter? What does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you. In this press conference, and you have a transcript in front of you, sir, reflecting that, you're asked about United States Senator Jeff Flake. And you said that you saw him at a victory celebration for then Governor-elect Doug Ducey. Right?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah. I remember the governor being elected governor.
Yeah, and you supported him, didn't you?
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. A sheriff's not supposed to be. Is the sheriff a political position?
Yes.
Okay. So a sheriff chooses sides, Democrat versus Republican, Libertarian versus Socialist, Green Party member versus anarchist. The sheriff is a partisan office.
Object to the form.
Yes.
If you're partisan,
But not partisan. What do you mean partisan?
a partisan, what the word suggests, affiliated with parties.
Okay.
Partisan, Democrat versus Republican, socialist versus libertarian.
In order to be a political figure, you have to belong to some party.
Well, have you ever heard of a nonpartisan political election? For example, probably when you ran for the city council.
Yes.
But you're partisan, aren't you?
I enforce all the laws regardless of what their political aspects are. And I'm sure we can prove that one.
How could we prove that?
Just go look at the thousands of people that we arrest and see how many have D's or R's next to them.
Okay. You've actually launched an investigation against the President of the United States, haven't you?
Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about the current president of the United States. That would be Barack Obama.
So which investigation are you talking
How
about?
many have you launched?
Well, I know I have sued him, and I know I have launched a investigation 3 years ago.
And were you investigating him for a crime?
Yes,
What crime was that?
fraudulent documents.
Okay. And did he try to, what do you mean fraudulent documents? What did he do that was a fraudulent document?
Well, when you have a fraudulent birth certificate, I think that's a violation of the law, no matter who it is and what the document is.
And where did this crime, where did this alleged crime occur, Sheriff Arpaio?
It could have been Hawaii, it could have been Washington, it could have been Arizona.
So you're saying that President Barack Obama could have created a fraudulent document in Arizona?
It would pertain to an interest of Arizona,
How?
because if you are not a legitimate president or there's a problem, I think it would affect the voter situation here in Arizona.
You know, Sheriff, I'm trying to be fair to you, but I'm very confused now. I thought you were the sheriff of Maricopa County, and as our sheriff, that you were supposed to enforce the law in Maricopa County regarding violations that transpired in Maricopa County. Alleged animal cruelty, assault and battery, drug dealing, serial killers in Maricopa County. Barack Obama wasn't born in Maricopa County, was he?
I haven't come up with that information. I'm going to say it again. The people that I represent, and I do report to the people, came to me, many of them. Sheriff, you are our sheriff. We have information about a fraudulent document called a birth certificate that affects the election even in Arizona. I'm not a legal guy, but that could affect it. That could even be a criminal offense here. I'm not going to get into all the legal points. But since you brought it up, it didn't cost the taxpayers any money.
Who paid for it?
It was a volunteer posse that did this investigation, so it wasn't something you or the taxpayers had to pay for.
But they did it under the authority of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, did they not?
Yes,
So you gave your official imprimatur to it, right? Your
Yes.
official stamp.
yes,
And you think that was appropriate?
yes.
Are you proud of that?
I don't get proud of my investigations. I do what I feel is right. I don't go home and look in the mirror. I think I've been a professional guy for 55 years. So I enforce all the laws. And by the way, that investigation is not done yet.
Oh, it's still ongoing?
You asked me the question, how many times did I investigate the president?
Okay, so tell me the status of that
I'm not going
investigation.
to, I don't have the current status right now.
Well, you're the one who brought it up.
No, I'm saying
You said the investigation was still ongoing.
Right, okay.
What's going on?
I don't have the current status.
Then how do you know it's ongoing?
Because I know it's ongoing, but
Who's
I don't have all the
conducting
details. I don't have all the details right now.
Who's conducting it?
I have investigators free of charge, no cost to the taxpayers.
Who are they?
It's my volunteer posse member.
Okay, what's his name or her name?
Well, Mike Zullo,
Mike Zullo?
yes,
How do you spell that?
Zullo.
Is Mike Zullo a law enforcement officer?
He's a posse member which has authority under the constitutional sheriff.
Is he post certified?
No. He gets his authority from the sheriff.
You know, Sheriff, I'm not kidding you. Stop that.
No, you're asking me the questions.
Stop that, Sheriff.
You open the door, and I'm giving you
Wait,
an
but
answer.
stop. I'm going to object to the form. You're not asking him a question. You want to get into an argument with him, do it somewhere else.
I'm just telling him.
You open the
Sheriff,
door, and
that
I'm
is-
trying to be honest and answer your question, okay?
Steve, if
okay.
you're done with your questions, we can wrap it up
Okay.
and
Okay.
go home.
Just 1 second. No, I'm just telling you what you're doing is crazy, and you should stop.
I won't even respond to
No, don't
your
don't
comments.
respond. Don't respond to that. There's no question pending.
Now, when in this press conference, Sheriff Arpaio, when you announced, I'm very confident that we have the proper evidence, unquote. What evidence were you talking about?
I'm going by what my detectives accomplished during their investigation. They had the nuts and bolts already. I defend my people. I have confidence in them. I don't have to know everything that's going on.
Okay. Can you specify any fact that would fall into the category of in the realm of the evidence that you were very confident that we had? I'm reading from page 3, lines 5 through 6.
I said I'm very confident at the proper evidence.
Yeah.
I'm confident what my people have come up with during the course of the investigation.
I understand that, Sheriff Arpaio. Now I'm asking you to specify what that evidence was.
I'm not going to specify. I said I'm confident they know what the evidence is. They're the ones that did the investigation. And I have confidence in my detectives, how they do the investigation and when they obtain the evidence. That's all.
Okay. So you can't tell me, you can't specify one shred of evidence that gave rise to your confidence?
No.
So you recommended 21 felony counts of animal cruelty against a 20-year-old young lady and a young man who had just turned 21 years old without being able to specify one fact supporting that evidence?
Wait. Object to the form. That isn't what he said at all. You're asking him for facts today versus what he said 2 years ago.
I'm not asking you. If you can save your speeches for the court. I'm asking Sheriff Arpaio. Can you name any fact? What did they do that would cause them to believe, you to be very confident that they had perpetrated 21 felonies? What did they do, Sheriff?
Who is they?
They. You see that young blonde lady right there? You see that young man there? He's a former Eagle Scout, by the way. Current, thank you. You're never a former.
And I'm the recipient of the Silver Beaver Award, if you want to talk about, which is the highest award.
For the Boy Scouts, or?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations
Thank
to you.
you.
I respect that.
And the nice lady was waving at me when you made your comment, but that's okay.
Well-
I don't know what that means.
Okay, you know, the thing about it is that when you're accused of 21 felonies, that kind of really kicks your life to the curb. So if they seem upset, it's because they are, Sheriff. Can you understand that?
Yes.
Well, have you ever been falsely accused of misconduct?
Very seldom, other than sometimes in frivolous lawsuits.
Okay, isn't it true that you were accused of racially profiling Hispanics in Maricopa County?
Me or my office?
You and your office.
Yeah, we were accused.
Okay, do you believe it was a true accusation or a false one?
I don't believe that it was true, but that's another matter going back to 2007. I'm not going to get into that.
I
as
understand,
you
Sheriff, but
understand.
all I'm asking you is, if you've been, in your view, falsely accused of something, it was hurtful to be falsely accused, wasn't it?
Yes.
See, if they seem hurt, it's because they are.
I understand.
Now, the statute, what statute did they violate that caused you to get up in front of the media that anyone in the world can witness on YouTube, all 22 minutes and 9 seconds of it, to tell the world that you were recommending 21 felony charges and several misdemeanor charges against these two kids?
Objective form.
Once again, I stand by the evidence and my detectives who did a very intensive investigation.
What law did they violate, Sheriff Arpaio?
Objective form.
There were many aspects. I'm not going into all of them. I don't have them before me, but we can talk about abandonment. We can talk about not feeding them, not giving them food in a 9x12 room with 28 dogs. I mean, all that can be talked about, but that's something that the detectives investigated.
Was there a specific law that you were accusing them of violating?
Objective form.
I don't have that knowledge right now.
You don't know what law?
I said there is a cruelty law about abandonment, lack of water, lack of food, lack of medical situation.
Okay, so are you claiming that Austin and Logan didn't give them food? Didn't give the dogs food?
Objective form.
I'm not claiming anything. I'm going by what the detectives revealed in their investigation and was sent to the county attorney for, I believe, indictments and so on.
Did your detectives tell you that Austin and Logan failed to feed the dogs?
I don't recall who told me that, but someone had to advise me or somewhat about that in a general term.
Okay, so you had to be advised about something like that in a general way?
I wasn't doing the investigation.
I know, but you were advised of it, you just said.
Yes.
Who, and you don't remember who advised you?
I said in general terms, I would believe that the detectives let me know,
Let you know.
before the press conference.
Marie Tromby was at the press conference, wasn't she?
I don't know.
Did Marie Tromby advise you before the press conference?
I don't recall.
How could I find out is there any record as to who advised you of these 21 felony counts before you announced them against these two young people to the entire world and maybe even the universe?
Objective form.
Not that I know of.
Do you think this is funny?
Well,
Objective form.
I think the universe is somewhat funny.
Okay. Did you think that Logan Flake had perpetrated 21 felonies against animals?
I'm going to say it again. I rely on my detectives that did the investigation.
When you rely on someone, do you first ask them to give you some background, or do they tell you, oh, that person's a murderer? Do you ask why? What did he do?
Objective form.
I think I just said about the dogs that were locked in a 9x12. I knew that. I was told that. I didn't investigate it. My detectives did, but of course I had the information of some of the situation that occurred in that house.
What
That's one of
information
them.
did you have?
That's one of them, about the dogs being in a 9x12 room.
What's, okay, how big are your cells over at the county jail?
In the jail?
Yeah.
So, almost the same.
Okay.
I didn't
Is-
measure it, but
Has your office ever been sued for overcrowding at the Maricopa County Jail?
maybe 30, 40 years ago before I put up the tents, but no, I don't recall for overcrowding. Maybe, are you talking about overcrowding in a cell?
Yeah.
I don't
You're-
recall.
you're
We-
claiming-
we don't have any problem with that.
You're claiming that these animals were overcrowded in a 9x12 room. You put your prisoners in rooms about 9x12, don't you?
We only put one or two. We don't put 20. We don't put 28 prisoners in a 9x12 cell.
Some of your prisoners are bigger than small dogs, aren't they?
Some are, yes.
So, okay, so are you saying the 21 felony counts were exclusively predicated upon putting dogs in a 9x12 room? Is that it? Was there anything else?
Object to form.
I think there was talk. Once again, I don't know all the nuts and bolts, but I think there was talk about food, water, that type of thing.
Okay. Talk about food, water, that type of thing. Okay, what talk was there about food?
I don't recall what instance that was brought to my attention and who did it, but that's one of the things I heard.
Can you remember any? Is it a crime? What about the talk about food constituted a felony?
Object to form.
If we're talking about cruelty to animals,
No, I'm talking
I
about
don't-
I'm talking about your 21 felony counts against those two young people right over there.
well, that would
Object
be,
to form.
that would be something that the county attorney would determine, felonies versus misdemeanors.
Do you recommend charges against innocent people?
No,
That would be wrong, wouldn't it?
if we knew that they were innocent, yes.
Isn't it true that before you recommend, isn't it true that before you're in charge of your office, right? The buck stops with you, right?
Yes.
Okay, now, Sheriff, before your office recommends multiple felonies against someone, you, sir, you want to be assured that the person is probably guilty, right?
I don't get involved, once again, when my investigators refer cases for prosecution normally.
Well, you get involved when the cameras are rolling. Your investigators aren't up here talking, are they?
Object to form.
I'm talking as the person who represents this office in that situation.
Well, not only do you represent the office, you're in charge of the office, right?
Yes.
And before you get up there and tell the world that you're very confident that you have the proper evidence to support 21 felony charges, don't you want to have some facts that assure you that the people that you're accusing are guilty?
Object to form. You can ask the same question over and over
You know,
again.
you
Do you-
need to stop lecturing me.
Do I? I'm not lecturing you.
Well,
I'm objecting.
Well, that's not an
Um,
objection. Objection is objection for. We don't.
Only in state court.
Okay. Oh, now there are two. Okay. One of you has to be quiet. You can choose which.
Go ahead.
Don't you want to have some evidence before you parade in front of the cameras that you're confident that you have the proper evidence to support 21 felony charges? Don't you want to have some evidence first?
The evidence I have are my detectives and the county attorney deputies that were involved in this investigation knew what they were talking about.
Okay, what county attorneys, deputies were involved in this investigation?
I don't have their names
How do you know they were involved?
because my detectives said they were involved.
What detectives told you they were involved?
I don't recall which ones.
Did you ever know?
The names?
Did you ever know any of this stuff?
Objective form.
What's the?
Well, the stuff that you don't know now. I don't know what law they violated. I don't know what evidence we had. I don't know what county attorneys were helping us. I don't know what detectives told me. Did you ever know?
Objective form.
I think I said abandonment. I think I gave you some ideas.
Okay, how did Logan Flake abandon those dogs? Question mark.
And the answer is my detectives would have that information.
So you don't know.
The detectives are the ones that investigated this case.
Okay, can you give me any facts supporting your suggestion that Logan Flake abandoned those dogs?
Not now.
Okay, can you give me any fact that Austin Flake abandoned those dogs?
Personally, no. I rely on my detectives.
Okay, can you give me any fact that Logan Flake didn't feed those dogs?
Rely on my detectives.
So is that a no?
The answer is I rely on my detectives.
Can you give me any fact that Austin Flake didn't give those dogs proper food?
Rely on my detectives.
Can you give me any fact that Logan Flake didn't give those dogs water?
Rely on the investigation by my detectives.
Can you give me any fact that Austin Flake didn't give those dogs water?
Rely on my investigation by my detectives.
So you rely on your detectives. Do you still rely on your detectives? For example,
Which case are you talking about? All of my detectives?
well, do you rely on Chief Deputy Sherrod?
Yes.
Is he a competent guy?
Yes.
He was recently held in civil contempt too, wasn't he?
Yes.
And Executive Chief Sands, do you rely on him anymore?
Objective form.
He's not with us.
Okay. Was he part of this investigation?
Not that I know of.
So, was there a statute, an Arizona statute violated?
There's many statutes of
What
animal cruelty.
statute did Logan Flake violate?
Once again, I will say this again, that's up to the detectives and the prosecutors to determine what the statutes, what the violation is.
What criminal statute did Austin Flake violate to justify your recommendation of 21 felony charges?
The same answer, it's up to the prosecutor to determine what the charges are.
Well, who advised you to recommend that Logan Flake be prosecuted for 21 felony charges?
That would have been the detectives, and I presume they were in contact with the deputy county attorneys.
Okay, you presume? What do you mean you presume? You guess?
I'm not guessing, I presume. I'm sure they would have more knowledge than me, but I'm pretty confident that they did run this by the lawyers.
Okay. Before you get up and announce that you're confident there are facts that support 21 felony charges, do you get a briefing?
I'm sure that before, you talk about the press conference?
Yeah. I'm talking about what you were just watching, where you announced to the world that we're recommending to the county attorney that 21 felony charges be pursued against the 4 suspects in this investigation. I'm very confident that we have proper evidence, period, unquote. Before you announced that to the world, Sheriff Arpaio, Did you get a briefing from your subordinates upon whom you exclusively rely, according to you?
Well, I'm sure that they, I didn't make this up, I'm sure that they briefed me on items that I would be talking about. So the answer would be yes, that I was briefed before I went before the press.
Okay, who briefed you?
I'm not sure.
How could we find out, Sheriff?
You'd have to talk, I don't know, I'd have to research it or talk to other witnesses.
Well, you know your office, how your office operates, right?
Yes.
If you wanted to find out who briefed you, Sheriff, how would you do it? How would you go about it as sheriff? If you wanted to find out who briefed you that your office was recommending 21 felony charges to be pursued against Logan Flake and Austin Flake, what would you do as sheriff?
Well, I would presume I would look at the public relations person.
Who was that?
I'm not, it could have been Lisa Allen, that's no longer with us now.
Where's she?
She's out of state.
Where?
Out of state.
Yeah, where out of state? Because I'm going to find her.
I'm going to make it easy for you.
No, yeah, you
Yes.
are going to make it easy because you're under oath and I'm asking you.
And I'm
and
going
you
to
have
answer it.
Okay, where?
It's in Idaho,
Where in Idaho?
Boise.
What's she doing there?
I don't know.
Why did she leave your office?
Retirement?
So she retired?
Yes.
She wasn't terminated?
No.
Okay. How else would you find out who briefed you on your recommendation or your office's recommendation on 21 felony charges?
Well, I would have to start researching, going back to those days, who was involved, and see if they remembered who talked to me.
Okay. Have you ever seen this before? It's defendants Rule 26A, 26A1A initial disclosure statement. You can share it with your lawyer.
You have copies?
You can just have that one. I don't need a copy. I know what it says.
Or are you marking it?
Yeah. I'll give you a copy at our next break. But in the meantime, you can use, I don't need a copy. I know what it says.
Did I see it before?
Yeah, have you ever seen that before?
I don't recall. I've seen it now.
Do you know whether the things in there, the statements in there are true or false?
I don't know.
You don't know? Never seen it before?
I don't recall.
Have you ever spoken to any lawyer about it?
I don't recall.
Has Mr. Leonard ever given you a copy of that?
I don't believe so. May have, but I don't remember.
Have you ever seen this before?
What is this that you're referring to?
Look at it.
Okay.
I don't recall.
Did your
They,
lawyer, Mr. Leonard, ever give you a copy of that?
I'm going to instruct the witness not to answer that. I mean, that's communications between us are privileged.
It's not a communication.
Sure.
If, if I hand somebody something, that's not a communication, especially in reference to that document. He had a duty to verify that. He's a party to this case.
Who had a duty to verify that?
Sheriff Arpaio had a duty. Sheriff Arpaio has a duty to verify all of his all discovery responses in this case, Mr. Leonard. He's a party
Under what rule?
under the federal rules of civil procedure.
Okay, well, we can disagree about that.
Under Rule 26, read the rule.
Well,
These have to be verified.
I'm going to instruct the witness not to answer
Can
that.
can I see that? Thank you, Sheriff. For the record, that's defendant's first supplemental response to plaintiff's first set of requests for production of documents. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 5. It's defendant's second supplemental response to plaintiff's first set of requests for production of documents. Have you ever seen that document before, Sheriff Arpaio?
Once again, I don't recall.
Did Mr. Leonard give you a copy of that?
Okay, well, I'm going to instruct the witness not to answer that question.
Are you going to refuse to answer that question?
Don't recall.
What documents have you seen that have been generated in this case, Sheriff Arpaio?
Well, I know I saw the one you're responding to in the press release, and I believe.
You mean this transcript?
Yeah, and I believe that the latest, I don't know what number it was, but the latest report that you wrote.
The latest complaint?
Yeah.
Okay. When did you first see the complaint that I wrote, Sheriff Arpaio?
I don't remember the timeline.
Did you see an answer on behalf of yourself to the complaint that I authored?
I don't recall.
Do you take notes on what you review?
Are you talking about general terms?
Well, when you're sued
I see.
for violating, well, let me ask you this. Isn't it true, Sheriff, that one of your most important duties as our sheriff, all of our sheriffs, you know, you're everyone's sheriff in Maricopa County, right? Not only the Republicans or the Democrats, the non-aligned, you're their sheriff too, right?
Everybody.
I understand, Sheriff. Isn't your most sacred obligation to protect the rights of the people of Maricopa County?
Object to form.
And to bring violators to justice, I'll add that up.
Okay. Now, Sheriff, you honorably served in our military, correct?
Plus government for 55 years.
I understand that, Sheriff. You respect our Constitution, don't you?
Yes.
You respect our Bill of Rights, don't you?
Yes.
You would defend our Constitution, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Now, the bill. Have you studied the history of the Bill of Rights a little bit?
Yeah.
Isn't it true that the Bill of Rights is primarily directed against government?
I don't know.
Well, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the speech. No warrant shall issue without probable cause. Isn't the Bill of Rights directed to limit the government's powers against the people?
All people,
All people.
especially, including sheriffs.
That's true, Sheriff. You have rights too. But as our sheriff, you also have responsibilities, don't you?
Yes.
Well, people have a right not to be criminally prosecuted if there's not sufficient evidence justifying that prosecution, right?
That's up to the prosecutors.
Well, isn't it up to you as sheriff to make sure your people don't recommend the prosecution of people without enough evidence?
Our detectives get evidence before they recommend,
How do you know?
because I have confidence in them, and I'm not going to get into statistics, but I think we've been rather successful in our
Are you-
operation.
Are you a fan of our former president, Ronald Reagan?
A
Check
fan?
to form.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of many presidents.
Were you a fan of Ronald Reagan?
I just remember if I worked under him, I think I did, along with other presidents.
Did you admire him?
I admire a lot of people, a lot of presidents. Did I
Okay.
admire him? I believed in him. He was our president. But did I admire? I admire my wife. Okay. I don't have any. My wife is my friend. So when you say, "Do I admire people?" I respect people. I respect you.
And I respect you too, Sheriff. Thank you. But, Sheriff, remember Ronald Reagan's old saying, trust but verify?
I don't remember that.
You don't? I know you trust your subordinates, but do you ever verify that your trust is justified? By asking them, hey, what are the facts supporting this recommendation of 21 felony charges?
I, once again, have supervisors. There's a checks and balance with supervisors that are also well-trained. And I rely on my staff, my detectives. If they did something wrong, then action will be taken. But to say that on every case, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of investigations every year. So you have to have confidence in your people to conduct all those investigations, sometimes under difficult conditions.
Do you have press conferences announcing to the world that you're recommending felony charges against people on every one of those cases?
It depends. I've had a lot of press conferences. Had one last night.
Is that part, and how are you enforcing the law by having all these press conferences?
Check to form.
I'll tell you one thing, I probably don't have 1% what other agencies. Every day you see public information officers before the public talking about everything, every case. You don't hear that from us normally.
Do you
So
remember?
this is a system that law enforcement has to let the people know what's going on in their agency. Nothing unusual with me.
Have you ever seen that document before, Sheriff Arpaio?
Can I see the front page of that? You handed me a different document
Okay,
than
well,
you
let
handed him.
me take yours back then, Jeff. Oh. Oh yeah, these are. Have you ever seen that?
You know, you're throwing a whole bunch of documents to me. Let me see what this is. Is this from you?
Well,
Who wrote, I mean, oh, this is Willincheck?
have you ever
Yes.
seen it? The question is, Sheriff Arpaio, have you ever seen Exhibit 6 before?
I don't recall. I may have. I'm trying to figure out what date this was.
Did you approve it?
Approve this?
Yeah.
What right do I have to approve it?
I don't know what right you have to approve it. I'm just asking you whether you approved it or not.
Do I approve what's in it, or did I approve the document?
Both.
I see this is from, my attorney, right?
Right.
Did you authorize him to file that?
I rely on my attorneys.
Did you see it? Have you ever seen that document before, Sheriff Arpaio?
I'm trying to recall. I don't recall right now.
Okay. I respect that answer. Now, Sheriff, I'm about to hand, and by the way, Exhibit 6 is the answer to the complaint in this case. And Exhibit 7 is the answer of defendants Arpaio and Maricopa County to the second amended complaint in this case. Sheriff Arpaio, have you ever seen that?
Once again, I don't recall on this one. I may have,
When's the first time that you heard Mr. Leonard was your lawyer in this case? When did you learn that, Sheriff Arpaio?
I don't recall the date.
Well, give me your best estimate.
Check the
Was it
form.
last week? Was it yesterday? Was it last year?
I know over the telephone was advised that he was our attorney, but I don't recall the date.
And when you say over the telephone, who called you?
I'm sure that my attorney may have.
Do you know who called you, or are you guessing?
Guessing.
Okay.
Don't guess.
When's the first time that you're certain that you actually communicated telephonically or face-to-face with Mr. Leonard?
Don't recall.
When's the first time that you actually met Mr. Leonard face-to-face? Earlier this week?
I don't recall if I met him in the past or what the situation was, if I did.
Sheriff Arpaio, I'm handing you something that's marked as a Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, Joe Arpaio Sheriff News Release. It's exhibit number 8. It's dated July 9th of 2014. Copy for you.
Number?
That is exhibit number 8, sir. Here you go, Evan.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you hand me 2 through 7? 2 through 7.
2 through 7. Oh, these?
Are those mine?
I'm going to have to get you copies of these. Please remind me.
remember it. I'm reading it, that's.
You can do
I
that,
don't
Sheriff.
recall from
That's your
the
right to,
past.
Sheriff, it's your right to read everything that you're presented, as you know.
Is the date July 9th?
It's dated July 9th of 2014, Sheriff. I don't know when it was created. That was one of the questions I had for you, sir. So have you ever seen this before?
I may have.
You're quoted in it. Quote, 5th paragraph down. We're not so sure what happened, Arpaio said. Also, these airflow experts suspect that even if the air conditioning system to that small room was functioning, the day these dogs died, the airflow in that size of room with so many large dogs inside it may not have been sufficient to keep those dogs alive. Did you say that?
I was apprised of that by my public relations or people that have knowledge of the case.
But did you say that? Or did someone just make that up and as a quote and attribute it to you?
Well, sometimes people quote me when I don't say it. I'm not going to say that happened this time. So I would almost say that it's rather accurate that I probably said it.
Is it true that you review every press release that comes out with your picture on it like this one?
This is a, what do you mean picture? This is on every press release. You
What?
call that a picture.
Well, you see, is that your picture
Yes.
in the background?
Yeah, that's part of this piece of paper.
Yeah. And your name is on the top right, Joe Arpaio Sheriff, right?
Yes,
Then you see where it says contact Sheriff Arpaio, right?
yes.
Do you stand by this press release?
I stand by the press release.
Okay. Now, in July of 2014, would you happen to know where Austin Flake and Logan Flake lived?
No,
Okay, let me try to does it refresh your recollection for me to tell you that Austin Flake over there was a student at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and his then wife, Logan Flake, resided in Provo with him, and they were only visiting Logan's parents in Gilbert in July when these dogs tragically passed away, trying to help their parents out. Does that refresh your recollection that they actually lived in Provo?
Check the form.
once again, I didn't personally know about this. I presume my detectives knew about that, where
Okay.
they lived or where they were at and so on.
I understand, Sheriff, but does that refresh your recollection that the Flakes lived up in Provo, Utah?
I didn't know whether they lived. I know that he was, I believe, attending college, what I heard.
Did you hear that he was attending BYU, Brigham Young University?
I don't recall the college itself.
Do you know where BYU is?
It's in Salt Lake City.
It's in Provo.
Provo.
There might be like a branch in Salt Lake, I don't know.
There is.
Probably is. Well, direct your attention to the next page, if you would. specifically paragraph 3. Sheriff detectives determined that they needed to speak with the caretakers, Logan and Austin Flake, before a search warrant was obtained. However, the Flakes would not return detectives' phone calls, and instead, the couple left the state. Sheriff detectives then tracked the Flakes to Provo, Utah, and 2 days ago attempted to question them about what happened. They refused to answer any questions, period, unquote. Did I read that right?
You're talking about sheriff's detectives? Yeah, you're talking about the
Paragraph 3.
wording, the
Yeah.
wording of it?
Yeah.
I believe what you said is correct.
Okay.
You didn't make any errors when you read it to me.
Okay. Sheriff, here's my question. Does that suggest to the reader that Logan Flake and Austin Flake ran off to avoid questioning by your detectives, and your detectives had to track them down out of state?
No, I would believe our detectives wanted to talk to them. And to talk to them, they had to find out where they were at.
But does this paragraph suggest that the Flakes were trying to evade your detectives?
I don't know what this suggests, how people would read this. I'm saying I presume our detectives wanted to locate them and talk to them.
Now, Sheriff, would you do me a favor and read the last paragraph of Exhibit 8 into the record?
There is overwhelming sense of sadness and anger by dog lovers about this awful occurrence, and everyone is screaming for justice.
Then it says, it attributes that sentence
Yeah,
to
I'm
you,
looking,
right?
I'm looking at all the quotes here. It looks every word is a quote. I'm trying to figure out which one they're quoting me
Did
on.
you say
Okay?
that, Sheriff? Quote,
well,
there is an overwhelming sense of sadness and anger by dog lovers about this awful occurrence, and everyone is screaming for justice. Did you say that, Sheriff?
I may have said it, but there are times, and I'm not going, there are times when people put quotes in there that maybe I didn't review, but I will stand by the comment that are in quotes that I may have said, okay? So
Okay.
you want me to continue on?
Please.
There's another quote, Arpaio says. Then there's another quote, a lot of quotes in there. Justice is what we are seeking, not revenge. We rely on what the evidence tells us and nothing more.
Did you say that?
I presume that I did say it, if it's in quotes, and I'm
What-
in that wording. I don't know.
Was
but
it true?
Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate.
Did you rely on what the evidence told you?
I said we rely on what the evidence tells us and nothing more.
Did you rely on what the evidence told you in this case?
I'm relying on our detectives when they conducted that investigation and they got evidence that actually led to an indictment. So, no, I am relying on the detectives.
So you don't rely on the evidence, you rely on what your detectives tell you.
Objective form.
Is that it?
I'm going
Don't,
to.
Steve, stop. Don't yell, please.
I'm not yelling.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. There's a video.
I
It will
understand.
speak for itself. Sheriff, that's a question.
And I answered it, I don't know how many times. I rely on my detectives to do the nuts and bolts of an investigation. I have confidence in my detectives. I rely on them. You keep asking me the same question, I will give you the same answer. They did the investigation. I rely on the evidence that they obtained and sent to the county attorney's office.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I was yelling at you. I didn't mean to yell.
You're fine. I didn't think you were yelling at me. I consider that to be a normal tone of voice. I really do.
Nine?
That, sir, is Exhibit 9, which is dated for release on June 23rd of 2014. It's a news release by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and the contact is Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And the heading reads, Sheriff Arpaio promises full investigation into the death of 20 dogs in Gilbert, Arizona boarding facility. Quote, no stone will go unturned. That's actually Exhibit 10, Jeff. I'm out of order.
We haven't seen 9?
No, but you will soon. And the question is, Sheriff Arpaio, have you seen Exhibit number 10?
Yes.
Do you stand by it?
Yes, mainly.
You say mainly. So is there something in it that you don't stand by?
Well, just a technical question.
What is that, Sheriff
Uh,
Arpaio?
When I've been quoted, and even the veterinarian I met with, I never use the word, the first I, me. I don't do that. And maybe it was a typographical error, but I usually don't. So met with today agrees the timeline. It was just a little, it hits me because I never go in the first person, but that's all right. But other than that, it's a press release that I received information from my people, and just passing the information on.
Do you think that someone reading this would conclude that you thought that the owners and the caretakers and well, who were the caretakers, Sheriff Arpaio?
I believe the used.
Okay, who were the owners and who were the caretakers?
The owners were the used, Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, and I believe the caretakers were Austin and his wife.
And Logan Flake?
Yes.
And you're saying that the timeline they gave you is, quote, highly suspect, unquote, right?
Where's the timeline here?
It's the fourth paragraph at the bottom of page 1. Even the veterinarian that I met with today agrees that the timeline given by the owners and the caretakers is highly suspect. Unquote. See that at the bottom of the page, sir?
Yes. I'm just repeating what people told me for the press release.
I understand. You know, Sheriff, you say that people write things that you don't say and attribute them to you, that you don't know what the evidence is, you rely on their subordinates. You're the sheriff. What do you take responsibility for?
Objective form.
I take responsibility to make sure my employees know what they're doing, are well trained, and that I have confidence in them. I do not get involved for the 90th time in the nuts and bolts of an investigation. My people do that. Because if I did it, I'd be working 50 million hours a day. So I delegate, management is getting things done through people, and I get things done through the people that work for me.
Are you changing that policy in light of Judge Snow's contempt findings against you and your senior staff and against your whole office? I've read Judge Snow's orders, and according to Judge Snow, he thinks that your office is run atrociously, and he's actually given a third party the power to control parts of your office.
So I have confidence in my people. They will, if there are any deficiencies, they will be corrected.
Who is David Hendershot?
He's my former chief deputy.
So he was Chief Deputy Sheridan's predecessor?
Yes.
What happened to him?
He retired.
Wasn't he investigated?
Investigated?
Yeah, investigated
Yes.
for misconduct.
Alleged misconduct, yes.
And who was he investigated by?
I believe that it was an outside agency on administrative situation.
What do you mean administrative situation?
Administrative.
What do you mean by that?
Violating any policies or what have you.
Was he investigated for misconduct?
Yes.
What was the nature of the misconduct?
I don't recall. There was a long list.
And
This is
isn't it?
many years ago.
How many years ago was it?
Had to be at least 11 years,
Oh,
or
Did he-
12 or 14
did
years.
he? How long ago did he retire?
Well, he retired, had to be 10 or 11 years. That's when Sheridan took his place.
So your testimony is that Hendershot retired 10 or 11 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. And did he retire in lieu of termination?
I don't know. He,
What do you mean
because that's up to him.
Did you ask him?
No, I didn't ask him.
Were you going to fire him?
I hadn't made the decision, but he decided to retire.
So you were considering terminating him?
I didn't look at all the facts. He retired before that.
Well, weren't you concerned that your chief assistant was accused of misconduct, and you were thinking of firing him, and then he retired?
Well, that could have been one of the elements.
And you
But,
trust your subordinates?
Give me that question again,
Okay.
because you say things that kind of twist around and.
Well, I don't mean
sometimes-
to.
Well, I don't understand what you say half the time, but go ahead, give me that. Give that to me again.
Okay. David Hendershot was being investigated for misconduct, correct?
Yes,
By an outside agency, right?
yes.
And that outside agency was what agency?
This is the Pinal County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. And the Pinal County Sheriff's Office issued written findings, right?
Yes,
And you read them, right?
yes. Well, most of them.
So you didn't read that either?
I said I read most of them. Other
Object to
people have
form.
read it too.
Okay. And what were those findings?
I don't recall.
Those findings, in fact, sustained many of the allegations of misconduct against Mr. Hendershot, right?
Could have.
And then you were going to terminate Mr. Hendershot, but instead he retired, correct?
I'm not sure when you say I was going to fire him. I was still reviewing the situation and he retired.
Were you considering firing him?
There could have been a possibility.
But yet you testify over and over again, you trust your subordinates, but yet your subordinate was investigated by an outside agency and found to have committed misconduct and was facing possible termination. Did that cause you to not trust your subordinates as much?
My subordinate that you're talking about was not investigated for incompetency and conducting investigations. I told you over and over again, I defend the people that run investigations and the nuts and bolts and the evidence they come up with. This had nothing to do with an investigation,
Now, Sheriff,
a criminal investigation of criminal activity.
have you ever heard of a figurehead? Do you know what a figurehead means?
A lot of connotations to that, I guess.
Well, let me be direct with you. You've heard of the micromanager, right?
Yes,
A micromanager is a manager who has his hands and everything and is supervising everything from the top to the bottom, right?
yes,
A micromanager is very hands-on, right?
yes.
And then on the other end of the continuum is a figurehead who isn't hands-on in any respect, right?
No, object to the form.
Is that what you, do you understand
No,
what I
don't
mean
know.
by
No,
a figurehead?
No, I don't call that a figurehead.
Well, okay. On what side of the continuum do you fall? The micromanager who's involved in everything hands-on? Or what I've described as what I've termed a figurehead who doesn't have his hands on anything and doesn't know about any of the facts regarding everything and just relies on his subordinates.
Object to form.
Which are you, Sheriff Arpaio?
Object to form.
I'm the type of guy after 55 years, and most of it in top management positions, that has received many, many awards for my management abilities. So I guess I'm doing something right. To keep a balance, I said again, I manage it. Management is success is through who the people you hire and how they do the job.
Are you going to discipline Mr. Sheridan based upon Judge Snow's findings?
I'll make that decision.
I know you will, Sheriff. And that's what I'm asking you. Are you going to discipline him?
I'm not ready to answer that question.
You've had over a month to review Judge Snow's findings. What are you going to do?
Objection.
Haven't
Form.
made the decision.
When do you intend to make the decision?
I don't know.
Do you really want your chief deputy to be found guilty of civil contempt?
Object to form.
Haven't made the decision, but I back up my chief deputy. Let's put it that way.
Even when he's wrong?
That was the judge's decision.
Well, your other chief deputy, Hendershot, your colleague, Sheriff Babu, found that he was wrong.
He didn't find what was wrong. His
There's no
job.
question. There's no question pending.
Isn't it true that you asked Sheriff Babu and the Pinal County Sheriff's Office to investigate the allegations against David Hendershot?
An administrative inquiry.
True, but it was an investigation regarding allegations of misconduct, right?
Yes,
Wasn't a criminal investigation, right?
correct.
I understand that, and I'm not suggesting that Mr. Hendershot has done anything criminal. And isn't it true that the Pinal County Sheriff's Department found that David Hendershot had engaged in misconduct?
That was their opinion. Strictly, it was no recommendations attached to it. It was just to review the facts and give it to me.
Okay, so your chief deputy Hendershot, independent third party, found he had engaged in misconduct. His successor, Mr. Sheridan, a federal judge, found that he engaged in misconduct and is held in contempt. Your two last chief guys have been found to have been found to have violated the rules, your own rules. And what are you going to do about it? These guys that you trust and that you rely on seemingly blindly.
I would say that there's two different situations. One was a personal type, possible violations. And we're talking about the chief deputy, which is another situation, much different than the Hendershot one.
Have you ever asked yourself, I might be relying on my subordinates too much?
No.
Well, ask yourself that. Or let me ask you that. Now, Sheriff Joe, Sheriff Arpaio, you have the Pinal County Sheriff's findings against Mr. Hendershot. You have the Federal District Court's findings against Mr. Sheridan. Don't you think you're relying on your chief deputies too much?
There is always a check and balance. The chief deputy also has subordinates. Chief deputy doesn't run the whole organization himself. Just like I said, he has people to do the nuts and bolts, has people to do the investigation. So you can't blame the chief deputy on investigation. He doesn't review, I believe, every investigation. He relies on the chief of detectives, intelligence, I can go on and on. And we make the decision together. He usually recommends on who top staff will be. So I have confidence in my top staff. I have confidence in my chief deputy, who did appoint the right people to get the job done.
Did you have confidence in Brian Sands?
This is something that the chief deputy, he reported to Brian Sands.
Did you have confidence in Brian Sands?
Well, yeah, I had confidence in him at certain periods of time.
Okay, now, Sheriff, I respect what you just said, and this is a sincere question. Don't you think you're relying on these guys too much, and they're letting you down, Sheriff?
Check the
Honestly,
form.
Sheriff, they're making you look bad. Don't you think so?
Check the form.
I'm sure I'm not the first one to have asked you that question. Don't you think that your command staff is making you, sir, look poorly?
Check the form.
I'm not out to win a popularity contest, and I don't do things for political reasons. I do what I feel is right. So if you think that people look at me in a different light, I don't do this job worrying about what you just said. It's making me feel bad. Evidently, some people like me because I keep getting reelected. I don't want to get into all this, but you're opening that door on questions I don't even really know how to respond to sometimes.
Well, let me ask you to respond to this question. Have you ever seen this document before? It's a news release dated December 22nd of 2014 from your office regarding the Green Acres dogs.
You have a copy for me?
I do. And I have a copy for your colleague.
Exhibit number,
That is exhibit number 10.
we already have.
No, 9. Thank you, Evan.
I haven't seen this one until I seen it now, I recall, but that's.
Do you remember that?
I remember some of the information, yes.
Do you stand by that? Exhibit number 9?
I'm not sure who they're talking about. Doesn't say here anything about anybody.
Do you stand by that? Or was that sent out without your authorization?
I may have looked at it. I'm not saying I prepared it, but I may have looked at it.
But do you stand by it, Sheriff?
Check the form.
Yeah, in a way, I do.
Okay, what way is that?
I think what may have stimulated this press release, without naming names, there's an uproar on some decision that the county attorney made, which I don't know if it's over a dismissal of the case, or I don't know
That's
what
what
he's
it-
talking about.
I'll tell you what he was
Because I
talking
don't
about.
think he was dismissed.
I'll tell you what he was talking about, sir. I'm not here to play games with you.
Yeah.
Dennis Willencheck represented Austin Flake and Logan Flake, and he filed a motion to dismiss the indictment and remand the case to the grand jury. And after the county attorney's office read it, they thought it had some valid points. So the county attorney's office actually moved to dismiss the case, and the court granted it, and the case was remanded to the grand jury. Are you following me?
For indictment.
Uh,
They were indicted.
well, they were the
Reindicted,
Hughes
okay.
were
Okay,
re-indicted.
right, yes, yes.
However, my
I
two
see.
clients, those two young
Right,
people over
okay.
there, starting off in their lives, Sheriff Arpaio, were not indicted. They were not re-indicted. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And that's when that press release was issued. Do you remember now?
Yeah.
And do you remember going before the cameras to speak to the world regarding that?
Check the form.
I don't know if I went before any cameras. I may have. I don't. I probably was just a press release.
So you don't remember?
No.
Well, I'm going to remind you. And Sheriff, I just pulled this off YouTube, the website.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how I found it, sir, if you want to find it. I put in Arpaio and Green Acre in both the first press conference and this.
This is Mayor and
Came
Fulton
up.
County Sheriff Joe Arpaio
Yes.
in Arizona. You know, in June of this year, my detectives investigated the death of 22 dogs at a suspect's residence, which is now known as the Green Acre investigation. After a lengthy professional investigation by my detectives, the facts were presented to a grand jury by the county attorney's office. The grand jury returned many charges against these 4 suspects. The defense attorney representing some of the suspects was concerned about the grand jury indictment and filed several motions contesting that decision. The prosecutors have now decided to further the investigation to address those concerns by the defense attorney. I anticipate that charges will be refiled regarding the facts that were obtained during our investigation, which is over 3 months in length. This is the holiday season. I understand how people love their dogs. This has been very emotional, especially to the owners of those animals. All I can tell you that the criminal justice system, I feel, will prevail and justice will be done.
It must have been around Christmas.
It was.
Now, is this Is this what I said there?
No, it's the same time and same subject matter, but it's not verbatim.
Okay.
Do you remember giving that statement?
Yes.
Was that you?
That's me, yes.
Of course it was you, and you said that, right?
Yes,
Do you stand by that?
yes.
Why did you give that press conference? Or what the heck was that anyway?
Check the form.
No, the media wasn't there. It didn't appear to be there. It appeared to be just like a video release to the press.
I never mentioned the names, if you recall,
That's true.
on anybody.
On this one, on your first page,
I'm talking about this press
You're
release.
right.
I'm talking about what you just showed me. I never mentioned anybody's name. Let's
That's-
get that straight.
that's correct. I'm straight on
So, what I did, because if I don't recall, if this is Willincheck's comments to the media. Something steered me to do this, to show that my people are competent and they did a good investigation. I stand by that to this day. So I was just trying to get out public that, listen, we are a professional agency, and because some lawyer gets out there and starts blasting away without me saying it, I just want to reinforce that we did a good investigation. I think that's what triggered me to say that without mentioning any names. There was a lot of demonstrations in front of my building. What do you call it, the 62, the Gilbert 40, or what is it, the Gilbert 25 or
It's a
30?
Gilbert, sometimes it's a Gilbert 20,
don't
sometimes
know,
it's a
yeah.
Gilbert 21,
Well,
sometimes it's a
whatever.
Gilbert 22. I was going to ask you that.
Well,
Sheriff, let me
there's a
ask
lot
you
of
that.
dogs that died.
How many dogs died?
I believe there was 28 originally in that room, but I think 21 died
Okay.
out of the 28,
Okay.
if I recall correctly.
Steve, we've been going about 2 hours. Is this a good time to take a few minutes?
Sure. Is that okay with you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This ends Media 3 in the deposition of Sheriff Joseph Arpaio, off the record at 3:29 p.m.